Hey friends, back again, and this week it's all about combining unexpected materials. So I'm going to show you a little trick I've been using for years. I love it so much. Pencil in wet watercolor. Yeah, you heard me right. I'm not going to tell you too much more though, because this is so good, you just got to continue on. So let me ask you a question. Do you want to paint with me? I know you do. Come on, let's go. Friends, I felt inspired to pop into my latest book, Free Spirited Watercolor. There's a section where I talk about combining sketchy moments from your graphite pencils with wet, juicy watercolor. So if you have the book, dive into that section. It's super fun, but we're going to go even deeper here. Let's do this. So I'm going to use a bunch of pencils, a 4B, a 6B, just a random pencil that I got online, a mechanical pencil from Zebra, and then my little Kate Spade mechanical pencil that I think is just too freaking cute. I'm using Academy watercolor paper because it's like my new favorite because it's super cheap and amazing quality. And of course, my current obsession, my Holbein watercolors. You ready to do this? It's going to be crazy. It's going to be wild, but it's going to be so good. Spray down that palette. And of course, I'm using my brush set because, do I paint with anything else? No. But as I always say, use what you have. And more on the front of using what you have. I would rather you sit down and experience this lesson with me with imperfect materials than you wait and hold off until you've collected everything exactly perfect and the same as mine. Okay? So hear me. Grab your stuff. Let's do this. Okay, here we go. A couple exercises to kind of get a feel for what this is all about. I'm going to be using a 6B pencil. So a 6B is just basically super soft. If you want to learn more about pencil ratings and all that, you can look it up on Google, or you can ask me. I can tell you more if you're interested. And then, of course, the Art for Joy's Sake 1/4-inch dagger. And you're just going to get a nice puddle of juicy, rich color on your paper. This is great if you have scrap you want to use up, back of paintings that you didn't love so much, but just make a couple of puddles. And when I say puddles, I basically mean a lot of water, a lot of color. You want both. And then you're going to take your pencil, whether it's sharpened or not, I prefer it to be sharpened, and you're going to drag your pencil through that wet puddle of color. So drag from the puddle outwards. And I want you to take notice of what's happening. I want you to take notice of how that color, the pigment, the watercolor is literally being drug out into the clean paper. And I want you to just play with that. Make scratchy marks, make sketchy marks, make squiggly marks. I don't care what you do. You just need to play and observe. And let me say this, if you are not seeing pigment travel across that line that you made, you don't have enough of a puddle. So you need more water and more pigment, and then you'll get that trailing effect with the pigment. Okay, let's get a closer look at this. You see what I'm talking about. It's incredible. So it's kind of like you're making your own watercolor pencils in a way, but you still get the lovely, moody graphite undertone of a pencil, a traditional pencil that you wouldn't necessarily get with using a watercolor pencil. And I love it so much. All right, let me ask you, are you having fun? Because if you are, I would love for you to give this video a boop. And what's a boop? It's a like. Go for it. Keep playing, friends. Fill a page up, make more puddles, make a mess, get in there, and just have a blast. And at this point, if you feel like you want to use a different pencil, do it. Don't feel like you have to stick with the 6B or whatever pencil you have in your hand right now. I'd also encourage you to kind of create shading. So go back and forth in an area where you've got a little bit of that puddle color pulled out, and go back and forth and shade a little bit, back and forth, softly, 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 and see what happens. There's so many different effects that you can get with this kind of mixed media approach, graphite into wet watercolor. It's a whole new world. I know. I think when I break into song, it's just because I have so much excitement that my words aren't enough. So apologies, but it is what it is. All right, let's look at these. We've got an HB, a 4B, and a 6B. And we are going to go along with another exercise here. So you guessed it, make some puddles, choose your favorite colors, spray down that palette first, make sure those little pots of color are super juicy and syrupy, and make some puddles. Now this time, let your puddles of color touch if you didn't do that already with the last exercise, because I mean, why not? Super fun, right? Friends, I just wanted to bring up a little something that's been on my heart. I got to be honest. I get some criticism here, and I'm so here for it. Kristy, you don't tell us exactly what brand or what colors from your palette you're using, and it's driving me insane. Friends, I have to say, number one, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if there's anything on this channel that is kind of like driving you nuts. But for the most part, I do things for a reason, and not naming colors specifically, there's 100% a reason for it, because I know many of you out there who are working and painting and making joyful art with me do not have the same exact palettes that I have. There's a very good chance you don't and never will, because I have some strange palettes. So the thing is, I don't want you to get hung up there. I don't want you not having the exact color I have to be a stumbling block to you making joyful art. So always ask me if you want to know a specific color that I used. Ask me in comments because I will respond. But just know on this channel, I'm not always going to list out colors, list out manufacturers, list out the color numbers, all the things. But I love you and I hear you. All right, we've got our puddles again. So just go ahead and grab a pencil, whichever one is feeling inspiring, and just start dragging down color. Drag it down, drag it down. Notice what happens when you make little ovals over and over again in circles. See how that kind of affects the way that the watercolor is traveling through the graphite. Go back and forth, traverse the entire surface of your puddle and see what happens. I'm bringing in the 4B. 4B is just kind of in the middle. The HB is kind of the hardest lead, but still soft. 6B is super soft. 4B is kind of right in the middle. And see what happens. See how I did that shading thing there where I kind of just filled in and filled in and filled in. Think about what you could do with that. With a flower petal, with a mountainside, with a leaf, dragging your color from your puddle of color into an area to define a shape. Oh, magic, friends. And you're going to see this in a little bit, how I take all of this craziness. We're going to turn it into actual techniques to create actual things. Actual things. But for now, keep playing. Enjoy this process. Get into it, sink into it. It's going to feel silly, especially if you're more of a perfectionist painter. And I know you're there. I see you. I feel your presence. And I appreciate that you're here. Because I know the way that I paint, someone called me certifiable in comments the other day. I loved it. And I know she meant it in like a super funny way. But I am a little certifiable when it comes to my art making. And I'm proud of it because I'm here to show you a different way. All right, moving on. All right, friends, here we go. So what I want you to do is this. You probably have some houseplants around, right? So I want you to grab a few leaves. I know it probably hurts your heart to like pluck a perfectly good leaf off of a plant, but trust me, it's worth it. Or if there's a leaf that looks like it needs to be trimmed, then get rid of it because you need some live samples here. If you absolutely don't have live leaves that you can grab from outside or in your collection of houseplants, just print out some Google images, pull them up on your iPad, whatever you have. Just have something in front of you to refer to. I'm probably going to paint these all on the same page because later on, honestly, I could turn it into a fun pattern. Oh, that might be fun for a future YouTube. Okay, rein it in, Kristy Rice. All right, friends, here we go. So we're going to start with that big leaf. And I'm going to use my 3/4 inch flat wash brush and just pick up some yellow and some green at the same time on the brush, or mix up a little yellow green if my style of paint mixing drives you insane. And you're going to create, yes, friends, a teardrop. This is going to be a wonky teardrop where the kind of rounded part of the teardrop is going to be misshapen and extra thick, extra bulbous, right? And then you're going to wiggle as you go to make wavy edges to kind of replicate the look of this leaf. And you know what, friends? If you can't find your own leaves, if you don't want to find your own leaves, just copy mine. They're right here for you. You could take a screenshot, pull it up on another device, or just paint right along with me. At this point, your leaf is damp or wet, depending on how much water you used. Go ahead and dip in, drop in a few other colors if you want to. After you finish the stem, of course, I went to the number 2 round brush from my collection to bring this stem to life, and I'm still using it, dropping in some darker greens, kind of like an olive green that I've got on this palette, a little bit of like a foresty green if you have like a hooker's green or a sap green or a earth green. There's so many different manufacturers. Basically just a darker green. If you've got a Crayola palette, mix a little blue in with your green, a little bit of red, you're good to go. You've got a dark green. And just follow along. Don't outline necessarily. I mean, if you want to outline, go for it, but it might just not feel as natural as you paint. And just remember, things are still damp. I'm bringing in the pencil now. And I said things are still damp because you can continue to drop in color. The wet page is an opportunity. Back to the pencil. Bringing in some of those veins right away. I am dragging the pencil through all of that dark green, wet watercolor. Look at what is happening, friends. This is magic sauce. This is magic sauce. Yes, we're going right into the detail. I am breaking watercolor rules here because you're supposed to build up color intensity and build up detail slowly, right? Not in my land. This is Kristy land. We are free here. So I'm going in where the stem meets the leaf. I'm adding a little bit of shading with that pencil. And when I talk about shading with a pencil, I basically mean just scrubbing back and forth slowly with very, very light pressure. One line next to another, so softly, so slowly that you can't really see that there are individual lines. It just looks like a nice shadow. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. All right, believe it or not, that's it for this one, friends. Simple, simple technique, little bit of wet on wet, 2 or 3 different colors, bringing in that pencil early. I noticed I didn't tell you. I think I used my 6B. Look how convincing this is. Gorgeous. All right, let's move on. We're going to go a little abstract here. Get ready for it. I'm using my 1/2-inch dagger. It's the one with the yellow handle. And you're just going to lay down some color on the page. Some greens, some blues, just get crazy, okay? Some yellows, whatever feels good and right for you, darker greens. Remember, your palette has been sprayed down. If it's starting to dry up, spray it again, but just grab whatever instinctually. Obviously, I'm kind of sticking with earthy tones because we're painting leaves here. A little bit of ochre, just keep going. And make sure you've got a decent amount of water here on the page. And you'll see why, because this whole pencil in the watercolor technique thing works really well and is really exciting the more pigment and water that is on the page. All right, this is looking good. Gosh, I really love that dark blue. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Grabbing my pencil here, and I am just starting to sketch. These are simple sketches. Don't panic. I know sketching is a source of stress for so many of us, including myself. But go back to the teardrop. You're creating teardrops with pointed edges on both ends, right? Pointed ends, pointed edges, teardrops, and just keep going, keep sketching. This is quick. Don't think too much about the perfect shapes. Just make the shapes. Do a little berry. Berries are so fun. Little round moments, little tiny leaves popping out from the berries. And while you're doing all this, I want you to pay attention to how you are grabbing that pigment from your puddles of crazy color and how that pigment is pulling out into your sketchy moments. It's so exciting. Maybe you don't feel like sketching berries or leaves. Sketch what feels good to you. I just want you to really enjoy this experience, this new way of pulling and pushing pigment around on the page. Look at how that dark blue is playing so well with this technique. I will say this, if you find a particular pigment that you've put down on the page and then you've put graphite on top of it and it's working really well, don't feel like you can't. Go ahead and add more of that pigment somewhere else in the composition. Go for it. Go for it. This is so, so fun, friends. I hope you're painting along with me. And if you're just watching at this point, I hope you come back soon, really soon. Make a date with yourself to come back and try this. See what I did there? I added a little bit more of the dark green. I wanted to see if that dark green would play as nice as the dark blue did. And now I'm going right back in with my pencil and having some fun. Same thing over here, a little bit of like olive green into the berries. Oh, this is so good, so relaxing. It's like, I feel like it needs a new name. It's like a version of coloring, but like way cooler. Friends, I invite you to hit subscribe. I don't want to get lost in your YouTube shuffle. I want you to be able to find me. So give me a like, give me a subscribe, and I would be so appreciative. All right, moving on to this next leaf technique. This is probably going to be the most detailed option that we've done. I'm going to use a mechanical pencil with this one because obviously. Then, of course, the 1/4-inch dagger. And we're just going to start with a little yellow on our brush, curved edge of the brush pointing down, and you're going to make a long, skinny, undulating leaf shape that is going to have a point on both ends. So friends, I started with that beautiful yellow. You use the yellow you love. Mine is a little bit more of like a deeper cadmium yellow, but you do you. Bringing in some green to continue to shape this small, thin, elongated leaf. I'm still using the same 1/4-inch dagger, and I just continue to reshape and reshape. And that's the beauty of wet on wet techniques. Your page is wet, you can add more color, and because things haven't dried yet, you can continue to shape and evolve and refine. But now I'm quickly bringing in my little Kate Spade mechanical pencil because it's just so cute with the rainbows. And I'm going right into that wet watercolor. Basically, my whole leaf right now, friends, is a puddle. It's not a crazy out of control puddle, but it's a big old puddle, basically. And so I'm going along the edges. I am shading at the very tips, the top and the bottom points. I'm going down the middle with a nice thin stroke, adding some texture towards the bottom. I'm just using this pencil to go in and add shadow and add depth. Again, I'm not outlining. That's just not my jam. I'm not a big outliner, but there's so much artwork out there in the world that is gorgeous. So no shame to outlining. So if you love outlining, this is just another way you can do that. But see what I'm doing here? I'm just gradually and selectively adding shadow, adding softness, adding definition along the edge of this leaf. And by doing so slowly and building up the shadow with this graphite slowly, I'm getting a little bit more of a realistic look, which I'm obsessed with. And look at that fine detail I can get at the tip of that leaf. This particular leaf has such a delicate feel. It curves very subtly, and you can capture that so beautifully with the fine point of a mechanical pencil. I'm going down the middle of this piece now, and you can really get a sense of what shading with a graphite pencil into wet watercolor looks like. You're literally just scrubbing and touching the surface of the wet page again and again in a certain shape to create the look that you want. Now I'm going in with a damp but clean brush, and I'm pulling out, lifting out some of that yellow color just to get some highlights now. And then quickly, while the page is still damp, going in with a little touch of brown right over top of that area that I just lifted. And you can see right before your eyes, the realism is just revealing itself. It's pretty incredible. And it's done in a way that is so not traditional. You can get this look with all watercolor and all tradition, but look at what you can do by being just a little bit subversive. I love it so much. All right, last but not least is this really simple leaf shape. It's a very classic leaf shape, and mastering this kind of shape is just so integral to your journey with watercolor, especially if you love to paint flowers like I do. And so I'm using the cat's tongue brush here because the cat's tongue brush, my cat's tongue specifically, is shorter bristles, stiffer bristles, lots of control with this brush because of the stiffness of the bristles. And so I want that control with this particular leaf shape. Here we go. Press, drag, curve, twist, and lift, and add a little water to your brush or a different color. And then press, drag, twist, and lift. And now you've got space in the middle. You can refine those points, basically a teardrop shape, and then fill in the middle with whatever's on your brush or just water, kind of dragging out the color you've already applied. Love this simple technique. I'm always dropping water on my page, so don't panic when that happens. Now I've grabbed some clean water and I've popped it right down in the middle of this leaf. And now I'm using that clean water to kind of flood this leaf shape and refine the entire shape of the leaf because I've given myself some insurance. What do I mean by that? I'm keeping this page super wet and basically creating a big old puddle with more water, more pigment, more water, more pigment. And that allows me to keep all of my surfaces, all of my edges wet. So that means they're not dry yet, which means I can change the shape of anything on this leaf that I want. Add in some darker green to get that depth. Add in some dark blue if you want. And now let's go in with a blunt pencil. What do I mean? Not sharpened. Go right in with some controlled lines to create your veins. Just follow the curve of your leaf. If you haven't seen my most recent video where I paint 6 different flowers, I talk a lot about following the curve or the silhouette of the piece that you're painting. Go ahead and watch that video. It's such a treat. And then drag out with your pencil that pigment that's still very wet in your leaf. Drag it out to create a stem. Holy moly. Are you as excited as I am? Now, of course, you could do all of this detailing with a brush, but you get so much more control with a pencil. And it's a really exciting dichotomy. You get the control with the pencil, you get the freedom and the fluidity with watercolor wet and wet. It's just spectacular. Now I'm lifting just with a clean, pretty much fully dry brush, pulling out some of the color, blotting my brush then on a paper towel, rinsing, and now I'm adding back in a little yellow just to kind of really liven things up a bit. So I've got some high spots, meaning light spots, and I've got some low spots, meaning dark. And that gives me so much interest. A little bit of brown, a little bit of, this could be a burnt sienna, this could be a raw umber, this could be like an ochre of any kind. Use what you have. If you don't have any of those fancy colors, mix together a little brown, little yellow, you're good to go. Adding in some more blue, like a cerulean here. I mean, you do you, a little bit more water. I swear I need to get a t-shirt that says you do you because it's like my mantra of many. I have like 100 mantras, but anyway, I digress. Look at this beautiful leaf, friends. I'm in love. All right. That's it. I hope you've had such a blast. I invite you to try each of these. You could take each of these techniques, all of these different pencil types, all of these different approaches to creating a leaf and combining watercolor and pencil, and you could put them all into one composition. How fun would that be? But friends, this has been such a blast. If you've had a great time, I would just so appreciate a like on this video. Let others know that this is worth their time because it was worth yours. Friends, until next time, happy painting.